Welcome to the Customer Wins podcast, where business leaders discuss their secrets and techniques for helping their customers succeed and in turn grow their business.
Hi, I'm Rich Walker, the host of the Customer Wins, where I talk to business leaders about how they help their customers win and how their focus on customer experience leads to growth. Some of our past guests have included Cody Foster, the CEO of Advisors Excel, and Patrick Meyer of DocuSign. Today, I'm really excited to speak with Blake Wood, the US CEO for Lumiant. But first, a word from our sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Quick, the leader in enterprise forms automation. When the last step to earning your client's business requires filling out paperwork, don't ruin your relationship with a bad experience. Instead, get Quick Forms to make filling out forms a great experience and the easiest part of your transaction. Visit quickforms.com to get started. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Adrian Johnstone, CEO of Practify, for introducing me to Blake. Go check out their website at practify.com and check out their new account onboarding solution. All right, I'm excited to introduce Blake and to get to know him a bit better. Blake Wood is the US-based CEO of Lumiant, which is based in Sydney, Australia. Prior to joining Lumiant over a year ago, he spent over 15 years with Envestnet, including roles in product development, corporate strategy, advisory services, and innovation. Blake shares a passion for empowering people to live their best life by helping advisors serve their clients and especially their families better. Blake, welcome to the Customer Wins.
Rich, thank you so much for having me. And Adrian, thanks for connecting us.
Yeah, awesome. I love how we can meet each other this way. Now, if you haven't heard this podcast before, I talk with business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, how they built and deliver a great customer experience, and the challenges to growing their own company. Blake, I want to understand your business a little better. How does your company help people?
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Where I tend to start with that is really more of the personal journey to how I got to Lumiant, because it really is what drew me to Lumiant, of what the team has built here and what we continue to evolve. So if I go back maybe 2 years, I was sitting down actually at the Revolutionizing conference and sat down and was having a beer with Gavin, just talking about life. And my father had passed away. My mother was, as we call them at Lumiant, the non-financial partner. And I had sent my mother to an RIA in her small town in South Carolina, one that I knew of that did a really great process, right? An RIA, fiduciary, goals-based planning, really gotten to how their clients and prospects felt and dealt with money. And I wanted my mother to experience that process. Unfortunately, as she was working with the advisor, didn't go through that same process I'd hoped she had done. And what I was really looking for is someone to help my mother in that transition period. She was a client of that advisor before my father passed. And then to give her kind of permission to spend, she's 76 now. I want her to go out and see the world and enjoy life, but her sole focus is she doesn't want her money to go down. And this is a woman that doesn't even spend her Social Security checks that come in. And, even as her oldest son, me pushing and pushing wasn't quite helping make the change. And that's where I thought the value of the advisor could really help. And we were missing that. And that's when I got introduced to Santiago Burge and Chris Dade, who are two co-founders, and understood through Gavin what they had built. And the idea was really that we as an industry had gotten the technology all wrong. As we think about the proposal tools, the performance reports, the client portals that clients log into, it's all about what's your asset allocation, what are the return streams, and it's not talking about how that client wants to live their life and what's important to them and what's that relationship to the money. And so we took a step back and designed this platform to really start with the client first. And it's these conversations that advisors are already having in their first initial meetings, getting to know the clients, what do they want out of life? What does retirement look like to them? But then those notes go into the CRM, and it's not a conversation that lives and scales through technology. So we wanted to flip that process around that continues that conversation of understanding, what is it you want out of life? What do you value? What's important to you, both non-financial goals and financial goals? And ultimately, we built on top of this research out of the University of Michigan that said there's these 8 dimensions in life that deliver fulfillment for humans. And as an industry, we've been really solely focused on financial wellness. And while there's nothing wrong with financial wellness, it's really a marketing tool, if I'm a little cynical, to scare people into buying more products. The outcome, you hope they're better off financially, but I think, as you and I know, money doesn't lead to happiness. And my mother, after I took her through the Lumiant process, I did this with a number of my friends and family before joining Lumiant to figure out how hard is it to have these deeper conversations about, what people's values are and what that means to them and what drives them. And for my mother, what I ended up understanding is her number one concern was to avoid being a burden on her family, being me and my brother. She's got enough money for a lifetime and then some, but she really doesn't want her children to pay for her care, her long-term care or elder care. And if that was a conversation that her advisor had had with her a number of years ago, he could have provided products and solutions that would have made her feel really comfortable about that outcome or the lack of that outcome, and would have given her permission to go out and do the vacation she's always wanted to do, to go see the friends and family across the world. And that was a real miss. And so that struck home for me. The other thing that's really important that I think we've missed in engaging prospects and our clients is not everyone wants to talk about research reports, products, and portfolios. They want to understand, can they live the life that they've always dreamt of? And the conversations, if you look at some of the planning tools here in the US, they're financial oriented, obviously, but they average less than 2 goals per plan. And we think a plan starts with retirement, we're not really doing a lot else with that. So how can we bring in the conversation, ask them what's important to you, and engage both partners in a meaningful conversation that's more emotional than it is IQ. So, one of the things that we like to say is advisors used to be able to win by being the smartest person in the room, having the highest IQ. But as things shift in time, it's really the more higher EQ advisors, planners, service teams that are going to win these relationships and have a deeper, longer, better relation with their client. And that's what the team at Lumiant has built, and we continue to invest in, is how do we hero the real advice that advisor gives well beyond that portfolio, and helping that client and that family attain and achieve things that they value and that are important to them. And that is about creating this experience in the space for a much deeper conversation and ultimately a better relationship with that family.
Man, Blake, you said so many amazing things in all that. And I'm struck with a couple of things. One is that this is about psychology. And when I was an advisor, I felt like I was a psychologist half the time and helping people break through their way of thinking about money. And I'll just give you a story, for example. My partner was talking to one of our clients who had, let's just say, like $10 million to their name, but they were only spending about $50,000 a year. And he said to them, look, you've done it. You've achieved it. Now you can spend it. And they're like, we don't want to spend it. We're too used to not spending it. They didn't even say it that clearly, frankly. And so he just turned around and said, look, here's what I want you to do. The next time you buy a car, you get the best car. The next time you take a flight, you get the first class ticket. You can afford it. You're going to leave your kids all the money that you could be spending to enjoy now. So I want to ask, and there's a lot of questions I want to ask based on what you said. How do you do that? How do you get a customer to shift? And how does your tool or your product actually help make that shift in mindset for people? How could it have helped your mom?
Yeah, so one of the things that there's common resistance of, oh, I don't want to be the life coach, the marriage counselor. And it was one of the concerns I had before joining Lumiant. So as I mentioned, I did this with my friends and family, and it's really easy. You start with first, let the client make the decision if they want to have this conversation or prospect. You invite them and say, hey, we're trying something a little different here. We want to make sure you guys understand what it is you want out of life or retirement, depending on where they are. And you invite them to have this little engagement opportunity where they go through what we call the Your Life Survey. And it goes through these 8 dimensions of well-being and ask them, hey, is this dimension important to you? If so, how is it important and how well are you doing? And it plays back to both partners, because we want them each to go through it if you're dealing with a household that has, the 2 partners with it. And it plays back and says, here's how you have self-assessed how you're doing in life and what's important to you. The next step from that is if you're bringing a prospect in, you're having a very different conversation. So one of the really neat learnings we had coming out of a lot of our initial rollouts and pilots as we had advisors kind of role play is they realized when a prospect's coming to them, they're probably not the only advisor that that prospect's talking to. But if you think about your firm's pitch deck, if you will, they're largely the same, right? We've got these 5 pillars of advice, or 10. We're holistic planning. We do tax, estate, and we've got these many destinations, this many people on staff. We've been around for this long. Our AUM is so big. It's all about the firm. It's not about the client. And if you have that, or the prospect, if you have that prospect go through that little 5-minute engagement module, you now know what's important to that client and what they're concerned about and what they're doing well in. And you can say, here's how our services, whether you got 5 or 15, can align with what you've told me is important to you and what you need help with. That's a really different conversation, and being able to convert that prospect to a client. And the next really important tool as we kind of go through the process is what we call your values. So this is going through and understanding what are the most important values across those 8 dimensions to those clients. And this is when some of the best conversation happens. We get videos and texts and emails from our advisor clients. I've had a great time doing it with my friends and family and my mother as well, where you go through and you pick these, different cards. I've got a couple of them here, and you put them out on the table. You can do it virtually via Zoom on the platform as well. You say, all right, pick your top 5, you pick your top 5, and then you unpack them with it. You just, all right, what does it mean to you to avoid being a burden to your family? And the first answer you might get might be very surface level. I just don't want to be a burden on my kids. Well, what does that mean to you? And then you'd understand with my mother, oh, that means I don't want my kids to pay for my elder care. Boom, I have something for that. And then what's been really fun, I did this with a couple of friends of mine early on. They both picked pursue work with a purpose. It was each of their top 5 values. They both had very different meanings. For Kyle, the husband, it was, I want to continue my career path and grow and continue to be promoted. For his wife, Lacey, it was spend more time in the church and volunteer my time, maybe go part-time, or maybe stop working my career entirely. They hadn't had this conversation. We were sitting at the dinner table. I had a bottle of wine out, and it was a fantastic conversation. I literally asked the 2 questions. You sit back and you watch. Now that family, those 2 partners are understanding a deeper conversation, which we often don't make the space for in our own lives as husband and wife or partners, to have that. And so now they've had a great conversation facilitated by you, the advisor. You know them as well as they know each other now. It's a very different relationship from what can often be a transactional or surface level relationship that the client's like, oh, wow, Blake's really helped us understand. Now we're building a plan on, is it possible, if Kyle does X and Lacey wants to do Y, what does that financial plan look like? And what are some other things that we can do to make that a reality? Because we've said those things are important to me. And it's these conversations that are just awesome to watch and hear about. And one of the things that I love most about coming to Lumiant is being a little bit closer to that customer than being on kind of the back end of things, of rebalancing, making the best portfolio, tax harvesting, all the technical stuff, but getting into the softer side, because that's really, I think, advisors of any profession that we have are best positioned to help clients live the life that they want to live. And we just needed to build a process and tools to help scale that. So it doesn't need to be that senior advisor that's got 20 or 30 years under her belt. The junior advisors can follow the tech, follow the process, and have this amazing conversation with clients that really change the dynamics.
It sounds a little bit like you're helping advisors be, or use finance to be the vehicle, not the destination, when so many advisors think that the money is the destination, or they portray it that way in the tools and services they represent.
I mean, think about the client you were talking about, right? The goal isn't to die rich. The goal is to live richly, right? We can have an inheritance goal for the kids we want. That's great. But the goal is to bounce that last check, if you will. You want to live those experiences. You worked hard. Your clients have earned that money. Give them permission to spend. Let them understand what it is they want to get out of life. How often, I would imagine you as an advisor had clients that their goal was to retire. Once they retire, they're like,
now what?
What do I do now? Now what? and that's where a lot of these non-financial goals can be hugely important to them. You're helping remind them. It's like, hey, you said you want to do these things. Are you doing them? Yeah, your money's good. You're good. Retirement's fine. But let me help you live the life that you want and get that fulfillment.
And we changed our definition of retirement with our clients. We said, look, retirement is the ability to do what you want, when you want, how you want, hopefully with whom you want, but I can't help with that. So that doesn't mean that you go golf every day. That might mean you keep working. It might mean you start a foundation. It might mean you travel, whatever that is to you. There's something else that you said in this, and I wonder if you've read the book Story Brand or Building Your Story Brand by Donald Miller. Have you heard that book?
No, I'm going to have to pull it down now.
Yeah, it's actually a really excellent book. I read it years ago, but it really brings out the premise that your brand should be told in the hero's journey, in the story format. And what I think a lot of people mistakenly do when they talk about themselves, their business, is they make themselves the hero, saying, look how great I am, look how good our product is, look how many things it does. But really the customer is the hero. And when you're a financial advisor, yeah, okay, you got billions under management and all those things you said, but really the hero is the customer and the advisor is the guide. So I felt like your product is helping the advisor live in that role of the guide more easily so that they can actually truly make the customer the hero of their journey because they understand the journey in the first place.
You've nailed it. That's exactly
Awesome.
it. It's heroing that client, the experience that we want them to have, and how we want them to feel, I think is really important. They're not really going to remember, your as an advisor, what you did on their portfolio, all the tactical stuff you did. What they're going to remember is how you made them feel when they had that meeting with you and how they felt when they left. And if you're not focused on those sorts of things, you're really just providing a service and not an experience. And we believe that delivering those experiences consistently throughout the entire firm, one of the things that we had, to your point of the advisor being the hero, that's a key person dependency issue, because it shouldn't be about that advisor. It's about the client. If you've got the tools and support and technology to be front and center, that the client is the important part, and you've built these components around that heroes them in their journey, you're going to win, and you're going to have clients that are going to tell their friends and family about the different things they're doing and how happy you're making them feel and the fulfillment they're getting out of their engagement with you. That is going to drive, as we've seen, organic growth in the US is awful. This is a way to help drive some of that.
So let's bring this back into more tactical things. You're talking a lot around or about the customer experience that your advisors can create with your product. How are you seeing that impact their ability to grow their companies and become better advisors and retain clients more, especially through generational changes? Do you have any success stories around that?
Yeah, we've got a good bit. We've one of my favorites. So Mark Ackroyd, who is our head of product, does a podcast around these stories with our advisors that we bring in, and he's just kicking off season 3. One of my favorite was last season, I think episode 4. An advisor down in Australia, his firm had used Lumiant or bought Lumiant and wanted to deploy it or had deployed it across the firm, but he had kind of resisted the change. He's like, I know my clients, I don't need anything new. This is good. I'm fine. So, about 6 months in, he finally said, all right, I'll try it. We kept nudging him because we've got a great customer success team. It's like, hey, try this out with, one of your favorite clients you think would do this, and then try it out with clients that you don't think would do this, and just kind of play it out and test it out. And he went through and he's like, you know what? I realized I didn't know my clients as well as I thought I did. And they really enjoyed this session. He was saying, this is anecdotally, because this is about 6 months ago, I think, that he first started getting into it. He said, I believe the longevity risk of the relationships he has decreased significantly, because there's no other professional in our industry that's going to know my clients like I know them now, and they feel it. And that was one of the key things he told me, or told us on the podcast, was, as an advisor, you kind of think some clients won't want to do it and some clients will. He said, let the clients decide. You bring them in, it's not a threat. It's like, hey, let's try this out. If you don't like this, we'll never come back to it. We haven't heard of an example of a client saying that yet, which is awesome. But what we've also heard coming out of there is, in Australia, some of the oil rig workers, right, your tough construction guys, they resist this. The other partner will kind of start engaging with it. They'll feel a bit left out. And it's the stories we get, which we probably hear more of because you don't expect them, is it's that old burly guy that starts crying first, the happy crying in the conversation about having these deep conversations that they typically wouldn't engage on their own, but then have that real awesome experience change. And another great one here from the US, one of our first individual advisor who's fantastic. She focuses around divorcees. And she had a really ultra high net worth client come in that had gone through a transition herself, and she was bringing a new partner in. And she was really nervous. She told us she almost canceled the meeting 4 different times because she was doing this for the first time, high value prospect, and really wanted to hit it out of the park. And it was so awesome. She was texting us after she had the meeting and went through our value session with them. She's like, they absolutely loved it. They're sending me emails about how they're debating on whether they're drinking sherry or Chateau, not Montelena, some fancy red wine I'm not forgetting right now. When we're 90, what are we going to be drinking on their porch? And I'm going to be there with them. So through one value session, a new prospect is already thinking about when they're 90, together with their advisor who they just met, what are they going to be drinking while they play Rummy Cube on the front porch? That's amazing. Those kind of changes in the relationship can happen that quickly, but it just grows. And those are the stories that keep us all here and keep us excited, is the change that we're making in the relationships within a family are hugely important, but positioning the advisor to be that guide of change, to show them how that they can engage differently as a family, but then also with their advisor that's helping them live the life they've always dreamt of.
Yeah, I love this. And now I'm thinking, so I love my advisor and their team, but why aren't they using this? I want them to use this because I want them to go through this with me. So in my family, I'm the financial guy. I was a financial planner. My wife is not a numbers person, her own words, and she doesn't understand all these financial instruments and things like that. But what she cares about are these outcomes that we're talking about. She cares that she gets to live her best life, that she gets to do the things she's passionate about, that we can eventually retire with the lifestyle that we want. That's the most important part. And my advisor, I credit her. She's a female, and she gave so much attention to my wife and got her to open up in the conversation. But I can imagine a tool like this doing even more of that. So I think that's great. Do you see your customers redoing this session multiple times with the same client over periods of time?
Yeah, that's a great question. We, as the progress meetings, what we call kind of progress meetings, is there's kind of one big initial lift as you're going through these for the first time. Your top values, really, we don't see them change often. They'll kind of change around life events, birth in the family, illness, death, retirement. But we want, before every meeting, kind of as we've engineered this and as we talk to advisors and firms about their client experience and how you map that, before you come in to have the client in for me, we say, hey, you should send them out a couple of these little links to update, and you can kind of package them all together where it's like, hey, let's see how you're doing across these 8 dimensions, update those. How are you feeling about your top 5 values? It's like, Rich, you scored yourself a 5 in this one. Have you moved to a 7 or 8? What can we do to move it? And it sets the agenda for the meeting. So each member of the household can kind of go through that 5 to 10 minute, if you do some longer ones, survey and engagement tool. And now you've got, all right, here's all the things we're going to talk about. Rich, you were a 5, you went to a 3. What happened? What can we do to fix that? Or, hey, great job, you went to an 8. What's the next thing we want to focus on? And so you continually score these. And one of the hero elements in our platform is called the well-being score. So, we have the output of the financial plan, and we integrate with other plans to show the financial component of it. But really what we love is the well-being. And that's a roll-up of how you're doing across the life scores, how you're doing across your value scores, and how are you progressing towards your goals. And that's what we want to track both individually. We'll give you a score, your wife a score, then roll up as a household. And it's not around money. It's around, how are you feeling? How are you making progress towards living the life that you said? And that, we believe, is a lot more important and impactful than the Monte Carlo or the overall AUM of a client.
Right. Blake, I usually ask people earlier in this conversation, like, where did you get your start? You said some of it, but you only went back 2 years, but you spent so much time in Envestnet and other companies. What really made you want to go down this whole path? I mean, when you were in product and innovation, what made you come to this point of being in financial services even?
If I go all the way back to my father, he was really early days. He was kind of in banking for a number of years, and then ended up landing at Ameritrade in the early 90s, before it was Ameritrade, and built out their online e-brokerage and e-broker, and just got what I thought was so cool, right? The day trading stuff in the 90s. I had my little account, and I thought it was so cool, the democratization of investing, and I could do a trade for $10 and sometimes free. And I'd go up there under my breaks and I would do the microfiche on the stock certificates. That was a thing. And I just got really, I thought it was really neat that people were able to have some control over their finances, didn't have to go to the broker for a $300 trade. So kind of followed that and had some internships, at stock exchanges and officially at Ameritrade as well. And then landed here in Chicago after school, looking for a job, waiting tables, and ended up at Envestnet, entry level ops, opening new accounts. We had about 100 employees at the time, weren't making any money, but it was just, such a cool environment. They're using technology, and that thing was SMAs were the big thing. We've now taken SMAs from $10 million per SMA down to, $100,000 or $200,000 at the time. Another kind of version of that. How can we use technology to bring better products and services to more people? And, the story of Envestnet, I could talk about it for days. It's such a great company and a great culture to grow up in. And obviously it continues to grow and be successful. And, my journey over time, I was able to continue to kind of move on and move up with Envestnet, and really loved the technology component and working with advisors who could help clients do more. And they built a great platform for advisors. But what I always really wanted to do was to get closer to that end consumer and see if there's more ways that we can help them than just giving them products. There's a lot more to life than that. I always felt the advisor had a position to do that. And that's when I got the opportunity through Gavin to meet Santi and Chris and the team at Lumiant. It hit home. It was the right time, the right place, and a great group of people here at Lumiant solving a problem that a lot of advisors and firms kind of feel maybe they don't need to solve, or they've kind of got it in hand. But we see it as advisors get in there and they actually do a couple of these sessions with clients. They're like, this is amazing. It's fun. And my clients are having a different conversation with me. And out of that, you get better outcomes for everybody. And you just wake up feeling good.
Yeah. So that led you into Lumiant. And I want to look at Lumiant from a different perspective, because you've talked a lot about your product and how it helps your advisor customers win their customers over. Are there any secrets to how Lumiant is winning over advisors to try this platform and get onto the Lumiant platform? Or is it the product itself? Is that enough?
No, it's the product is great. It's we don't have, because we're a newer company, we've been able to design it from scratch, and we designed it with the end client in mind first. And so it's really easy to use the technology. What takes sometimes a little bit of coaching or nudging is having that first conversation. I went back to our advisor in New York that works with the divorcee. She almost canceled that meeting 4 times. But once she did it, all in. We've got a podcast coming out with her in a couple of weeks, and a raving fan. It's once you kind of dip your toe in there, you have that experience, you don't come back from it, because it is just such a game changer in the way you're able to deliver advice and understand clients. So, we start as any young firm does, and working with the RIA markets, because it's kind of easier to get through that process than going through the large enterprises. And you're finding your kind of niche networks of people that have already been doing this, but haven't had the opportunity to scale it through technology. They've been doing kind of paper-based workbook type seminars and client meetings. And so those become sort of the early ones, but then you start seeing, some firms that are doing a lot more collection around data, NPS scores, and inorganic growth, which is Savant Wealth Management here in Illinois, also one of our original funders, are pairing this information to see, as clients are going through the Lumiant process, are we seeing an improvement in NPS? Are we seeing an improvement in referral rates? What they've already told us is it's helping them on the acquisition side of it, because firms that they're looking at and talking to are seeing Savant leading into what they all kind of believe is coming, of EQ winning over IQ, needing to engage clients in a way that they want to be engaged. It's helping them on the acquisition side, which we think is a really important story that will play it out as well, because you're able to deliver a single client experience supported by technology across a number of advisors and planners. And remember, it doesn't have to be an advisor that's walking through this. It's the person that wants to engage the clients that has that EQ. If you've got your rainmaker advisor and their job is, they believe their value is creating the most unique portfolio in the world, have him or her continue to do that. But you've got someone on the team that is more the extrovert, higher EQ that can engage the household.
Right. So how do you see yourself, or how do you see Lumiant growing and, building new products? I mean, bringing outside in, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, we've got quite a full roadmap. One of the things that we're really excited about that we'll be announcing soon, hopefully before the podcast comes out, but we just finished closed an acquisition of an awesome firm based here in Chicago called Genevity. Heather Holmes, the founder and CEO, she's joined our team and us here in Chicago in our office. And what they've done is focus around personalized longevity and lifestyle choices and the impact that can have to families. So one of the things that we poorly do as planners is we use actuarial tables, and that's just assuming everyone's average. And we think one of the learnings I had from talking to Heather is that the data shows that, people that have advisors or planning clients, they live longer, which kind of makes some sense to think about it because they've got more money, they can take care of themselves, go see the doctors, those sorts of things. But if we build the plan out the actuarial table, we plan for them to live a shorter life than they're going to live. Then you bring in some of the ethnicity data, some of the lifestyle data, right? Do they work out? Do they eat their veggies? Those sorts of things. And you'll see a change in longevity. But what's also really cool, and where you overlay this on the planning and how clients want to live their best life, is there's these go-go years in retirement, and then there's some go-slow years where you're bringing in elder care and these sorts of things. As you know, here in the States, those costs are significant. And if we're not accurately planning and projecting for those, and this can be an awkward conversation, that, hey, Rich, let's talk about when you're going to die and, what long-term care is going to cost. Not an uplifting conversation, but what Genevity has built is a really fun tool that allows you to have that conversation in a completely unbiased way. It doesn't overshare information with the advisors, but then you put that on their life timeline and in the Monte Carlo as well. And you can say, all right, you've had these goals here and there, but these are going to be your go slow years. You might want to move some goals forward a little bit, or you're going to have a lot of active retirement years. You don't need to put a whole bunch early on. And it's really about helping clients live better longer. And if you bring in health, marry that with their values and their wealth, you've got something really neat there that is very personal to a client. And we're not calling every client average, because we're understanding them at a much deeper level, and we're giving them their personalized longevity and healthcare costs.
That sounds great. Congrats on the acquisition and marriage effectively with this new company.
Thank you. We're excited about that.
So, I mean, speaking about the future, I want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence because it's on everybody's mind. It's one of my favorite topics. And I don't want to go way off in the deep end on this, but how do you see AI impacting the customer experience, maybe even the Lumiant customer experience?
Yeah, we're having a great conversation about this last night. We'd actually trained, one of our head of ops had trained ChatGTP to actually role play these value sessions and set up as an interview. It's just a trip to watch. But one of the things that we saw, and I saw in some of my previous roles, is AI is going to be a great tool to help optimize a lot of the tactical stuff, like portfolio building, trading, rebalancing, all that operational overhead that we put technology against, and we still have a whole bunch of ops people doing those operations. Let AI handle all that and upskill some people to where we will now have more capacity to have better conversations with clients and spend more time doing that frontline thing. One of the things that we believe is that, again, going back to EQ, is AI is not going to have, I'll probably eat my words in 10 years or 15, but it's not going to have that high level of EQ, right? I can't show empathy being across the table from you, or more commonly Zoom these days. Being able to be in front of the client, having more time to do that. We're looking at ways that AI can help actually augment or train the advisor, nudge the advisor. So one of the things, as you're going through and you hear a client tell their story about why things are important to them, sometimes if you haven't gone through this a few times, or this isn't, you're more of an introverted advisor, use that AI to nudge. Here's the follow-up question to ask. Here's how to engage with that client, because they've said these things are important to them. Here's some ways you should think about working with them.
So it's not going to be an AI and an ankle bracelet that kicks you under the table. Hey, pay attention to this.
Maybe, who knows?
Yeah, that's great. And my COO would totally agree with you, because he says outsource the left brain stuff and insource the right brain stuff. Let you do your best creative work that really requires that intellectual aspect that only humans really bring to the table.
Absolutely.
Well, this is really awesome. I'm wondering if, given that you've gone from big company to a smaller startup style company, are there any key secrets or lessons that you've learned that you would share with other business leaders on how they can win more customers?
It's quite a change to go from big to the small and do the startup. One of the things that I learned in my old roles, and I think what plays well here, whether it's talking to a firm about coming into the Lumiant family or talking to clients and prospects, is to always, I think it's always good to leave something on the table as you think about negotiating. You always want both parties to feel like they've won. Being the best negotiator, the hardest negotiator, may get you the best price on something, the best deal on something, but you've left someone feeling like they've lost. Mm-hmm. And so when engaging with a firm, maybe an integration partner, clients, it's the old meeting them halfway, if you will, and making them feel like they've got something out of this as well, where they haven't sold everything to you, you haven't taken everything from them. It's moving away from being transactional in nature, but just that was leaving something on the table when you're negotiating to give them that good faith in you, and that you want to partner with them and be their long-term partner. As we talk to firms, it is come on this journey with us, right? We're just hitting our year anniversary here in the US. We've got a great platform. We're going to continue to grow. We've got lots of ideas. Our advisors have a lot of ideas, but start on this journey with us, help us grow, and you're going to have an influence in what we do together. And that's been really positively received. We've got at Lumiant, we've only taken strategic investors, which is a fantastic opportunity for us with Savant and InvestBlue and Australia, very large independent practices that see the value in what we're doing, and they get to wear both the user hat and the investor hat. And they were so excited about what they saw. They're like, we'd love to join this, and became investors with us, which I think just is a great testimony to what the team has built here at Lumiant.
Oh, that's outstanding. But I got to say, it sounds like one of the other takeaways is just try it, see if you like it.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of funny because when I first built Quick, before it was named Quick, and I showed it to my partner, it took me 3 months to get him to try to fill out forms electronically. And then he did it. And he's like, why haven't I been using this for the last 3 months? I'm like, that's what I've been saying. Why? Well, Blake, as we wrap this up, I do have another question for you. But before I ask it, I want to help people connect with you. What is your website and the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, website is lumiant.io. LinkedIn is great, or email me directly at blake@lumiant.io. Those would be the best ways.
Awesome. Okay, ready for the last question?
Yes, sir.
Who has had the biggest impact on your leadership or how you approach your role?
That one's pretty easy. It's Judd Bergman, founder and CEO of InvestNet. I got 17 years at InvestNet, and even from the first year I was there, opening new accounts on the platform, he knew my name, and it wasn't that I was special. Judd made it a point to make everyone feel seen and heard. Had a great vision for our industry, and the way he treated acquisitions and brought in great talent, and was able to manage all the great talent that came in with that to keep them a part of it, and then continue to grow and incubate what was a really young team back in 2004 or 5 when I joined to what it is, when unfortunately he passed. He left a lot of great lessons for all of us at InvestNet that undoubtedly, I was having beers with an old InvestNet colleague a couple of weeks ago. Our conversations always come back to how lucky we were to see him and to be a part of what he'd built, but also learn all the lessons of, to be a leader and an entrepreneur. You don't have to be the meanest, toughest, smartest guy, right? A lot of people get away like, oh, they're hard-driven entrepreneurs, and this is, I can bang the table and yell and scream. That was never Judd. He led with compassion and made people feel like they're a part of it. And as he, and when I said leave something on the table, that was something Judd did very intentionally with our acquisitions. He wanted to make them feel like they were getting a good deal out of this, and left things on the table because that was really important to him. It was really important to the founders and the companies that we were acquiring and the people that were part of that. And if you can make people feel like they're part of that family and that company and at a deeper level, it changes the way people want to work for you. It changes the output they give for you. It becomes not the job, but it becomes more of a purpose. And he was fantastic at it. And that's something I think often about is, what would Judd do?
Yeah, I love that story. Now I wish I'd known him. That's awesome. Look, I want to thank Blake Wood, the US CEO of Lumiant, for being on this episode of the Customer Wins. Go check out Blake's website at lumiant.io. And don't forget to check out Quick at quickforms.com, where we take the work out of paperwork. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion, and will click the like button, share this with someone, and subscribe to our channels for future episodes of the Customer Wins. Thank you so much for joining me today, Blake.
Thank you so much, Rich. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Wins podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.